Okay, today's guest has been putting on a clinic when it comes to multi-location expansion. He started off with a single location, has been great at putting in systems that allow him to scale. Here to share some insights on expanding your fence company in multiple locations, we have Fadi. Hey, Fadi.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And for everyone else, welcome to Post by Post, the podcast where fence and deck builders share the real stories, the real struggles, and the real lessons behind the fences they build and the businesses they grow. Before we dive into your story and everything that has to do with it, let's let the people know who you are. Tell me a little bit about your company and where you're based and what makes you guys unique.
Sure, yeah. So Heartwood Fence, we started in Virginia Beach originally, Southwest Virginia, and me and my partner had a good bit of history in the home services industry before then, and we thought it would be interesting to do more in the fencing world because both of us come from fairly complex background. I had some in the GC world and operating under a handyman business and doing stuff in there, and he was more in the pest and foundations world.
Hmm.
And we thought it'd be interesting to have something that's a little more linear and simpler, not to degrade the amount of complexity that goes into fencing, but it was a little more predictable as a math problem to look at least when starting a
Hmm.
business. And we really just wanted to work together and had a vision for the type of people we wanted to spend more time with, which is a lot of what Heartwood is about, and choosing the right operators and working with the right sales reps, installers, project managers, etc. So that was a big piece of it going into starting Heartwood.
And what year was it when you started at Heartwood?
We started in 24.
February 24. And how many locations do you have now?
Now we are up to three that are running, two more coming soon. And we actually started and closed one too. So it's not all been rosy and peachy. Yeah, there's been some ups and downs in doing this, and we're still learning. I mean, we're a year and a half, almost 2 years in, so there's a lot to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's cool that you got it yourself. You put enough systems in place that you could focus, you can continue to work on the business as opposed to in the business, which I think is something that a lot of people get trapped in, which is why I
For
wanted you
sure.
to have on here. So,
Yeah, for sure. My background, so I'm originally an engineer and worked in manufacturing, which taught me a lot of the stuff I know based on lean principles and the
yeah.
Toyota production system and all that. And then I've read a few books that have been really influential in the way we build systems at the businesses I've touched, like E-Myth is a really good one. And
That was the
then,
one I thought of when you said you're an engineer doing production. I was like,
yeah,
oh, it sounds
E-Myth
like,
was really good, really
yeah.
good. And then Traction. So a lot of our principles are based on EOS, which
Okay.
allow us to have a more predictable thing you can copy paste into different locations.
Love that. Okay, cool. Very cool. I think I have a copy of Traction within 4 feet of me right now. So
Everyone should.
everyone should, I agree. Okay, so you landed on when you looked at your skill sets, you landed on fencing just because the math equation would make it more predictable. Or did you have background installing fences?
Yeah. I'd probably done 3 or 4 years with fencing as part of what we do,
Yeah,
but not necessarily the main thing. And I
right.
really enjoyed it. It was, you hear some people talk about the threshold when living in home services. It's like, are you going into someone's home? Are you crossing that threshold? Or are you on the outside? Are you doing exterior services like roofing, fencing, pavers, concrete, whatever it may be,
Yeah.
landscaping? And I'd worked a lot inside the threshold and had the white glove service required to be able to enter someone's home in the north end of Virginia Beach, which is a really nice area. And to take that and apply it outside on exterior services was something that wasn't as commonly found and harder to come by. To have someone polished come take care of a project that they never need to go inside your house, but to have someone polished come take care of business was cool and very interesting for us.
Cool. Awesome. Awesome. Well, I want to ask some questions about the current operation, especially digging into like some of the systems and the hiring, because obviously that's a huge part of pulling yourself out of the field. From a very high level, like choosing your business model and breaking down the math, what led to you deciding to go multiple location instead of just like digging vertically into and
Mhm.
just kind of dominating a single market?
Yeah, good question. It's a very people-driven decision. Nathan, my partner, and I, we love enabling entrepreneurs or people who wouldn't otherwise go out and necessarily start their own business. Maybe they would, but they really want to do it with some people they trust and share common values with. And we love getting to work with high agency people. So in a way, if you focus in a single location, you're semi-limited in terms of how quickly you can grow and how many people you can get to work with. But if you look at different markets and different locations, then it gives you a chance to expand and work with different kinds of people and learn from the strengths and weaknesses of one another and kind of form uh, like a peer group for these operators and help share lessons and best practices across all the different ones beyond just what another company might be willing to share. Because it's a bit of an awkward conversation sometimes when
Yeah,
you go
like
up to the owner of another local fence company or whatever it may be, which
yeah.
I we did a lot early on and try to ask questions, and it feels like you're trying to take their secret sauce, but it's genuinely not. We're all trying to learn together and provide a
Mm,
better service in the area. So this is a lower stakes way because someone in Virginia Beach and someone in Ohio are not concerned about how they price necessarily or what their price is, but the way they get the quote to a customer, the way they show up to a client's home, the way they speak to them, all that is easily shareable and more fun to chat through. So that's what pushed us in that direction.
So instead of like, so you tried talking to, I mean, obviously talking to one of your top competitors in the market might be tough to get like an honest take on how you could do things better, but you
Right.
tried reaching out over state lines to like other fence companies in other parts of the country and then decided it would just be, hey, why don't we just like sort of plant our flag in different locations and build our own little community and
hmm
share best
hmm
practices that way.
Yeah, a really good friend in St. Louis helped a lot in shaping the way we thought about things, and he was such a generous guy in terms of information, his time. Like,
Yeah.
flew out and hung out with him for a couple days and had dinner and got to see all sorts of stuff. And he was very generous in sharing that sort of information, which really inspired us to look at different locations too. So yeah, crossing the state lines helped.
Yeah. Very cool. Was there a how are you measuring like when to add that next location?
I wish I had a formula. It's very gut right now,
Okay.
and it's very much based on the type of person we'll run into and our capacity. Like it's a it's a fairly daunting thing to get something off the ground
Yeah.
and running and established in a new location. There's a lot of legal requirements and licensing and there's all sorts of stuff. Every state you go into is different. And yeah, that's a big piece of it. But the biggest piece of it that determines it is did I meet someone and did me or Nathan or one of our close friends
Mm.
meet someone in these locations that is like hungry to start something and is just looking for the right opportunity or whatever it may be. And are they a good fit?
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Well then I'm sure the question a lot of people would have would be how what are the systems you're putting in place to pull yourself out of the day to day so you can focus on multiple locations? Because there's so many people. I mean, I talk to people all the time. I talk to a lot of different fence companies, and a lot of them are owner operator or like owner operator like once removed. They have one crew or they have a couple guys they can lean on if it gets busy who typically will work for them full time and during the busy season. But even having a conversation about, expansion, what are your goals for next year? A
Mhm.
lot of times it comes up short because they're just so busy, either hoping for referrals or when the referrals come in. When they have no referrals, they think about marketing. And then when the referrals come in, they're like, oh, I'm too busy to think about marketing. And so I think it's a huge part that affects probably over 60% of the industry where people just can't pull themselves out of the weeds. And it seems like from very early days, you and Nathan are doing that. So what are some of the systems that you put in place to allow yourself to be pulled out of the business so you can work on it instead of in it?
Yeah, it's a lot of it is shaped by EOS in terms of the systems we have.
Yeah.
So we had a scorecard since day one, and you and you and Ashton know I ask for very specific metrics on a weekly or monthly basis, and
Yeah.
you guys are super helpful in getting that stuff to us, which makes you guys such a good partner in the marketing world. But having the right metrics to be able to measure what's going on is really helpful. Having the right team, that's huge. I mean, Spencer crushes in Virginia Beach and does such a good job at managing his workload, maintaining good communication with us, making sure that installers are the right time, all their equipment and material is there. And there's a lot of checks that we've put from bottom up to make sure that a client's fence is installed in a timely fashion as expected within budget, all this stuff. So
He's
yeah,
the owner operator kind of like.
owner operator.
Got it.
Yes,
Got it.
sir.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay.
And he has a team with him that help with all sorts of stuff, whether it's installers, another salesperson, and a project manager. So they're well staffed, and he's he's done the right things in building that branch properly to be able to step back as well and be able to look at the big picture. And he himself look at his scorecard and say, okay, at this lead per week, we need to hire another sales rep, or at this count of jobs per week, we need to get another crew. And that's the stuff he's starting to look at more and more as he grows in that specific spot.
And and if somebody, let's say, because we've talked a lot about the scorecard, so I'm sure there's a process to reverse engineer what you want to have happen into how to track the daily metrics. Can you walk me through
Yes.
that process?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Like if someone
So
wants a scorecard, they're
the
like,
way
damn
I
it, I'm
think,
drowning.
I know the way I think of it is to keep it simple is the thing we all want is jobs, more jobs. Job, the thing before a job is the quote. So then you want quotes, and then the thing before that is a lead. So you got to work backwards from what your capacity is. So let's say you have a crew that can handle 5 jobs a week, and you want to keep them fed, and you want to keep moving. And let's say your conversion rate on quotes is 50%. You're crushing it. Okay, so if you want 5 jobs and your conversion rate is 50% on quotes, then you need 10 quotes. Easy
Yeah.
math. And then how many leads become quotes? Let's say it's half again. So that means you need 20 leads a week to turn into 5 jobs a week. And then those are your metrics that you're measuring on a weekly basis. And you
Mhm.
reverse engineer that. And then you find by hook or by crook those 20 leads. And you make sure you're working with the right people, putting money into the right lead sources, and constantly analyzing to make sure that those are the right spots to spend. And something I've seen time and time again, and I've heard stories of as well, and I've done myself, is it's very fun and exciting to see Reddit sends you an email. They say $500 off your first month of ads. Come spend it with us. And I'm like, that doesn't fit into my budget, but I feel like I'm losing money if I don't do it. So I take money away from something that is working and put it into this speculative source
Yeah.
to try to generate more leads, and then I suffer on the back end because I didn't do it right or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
A big tip I would have for a lot of operators, regardless of the home service industry they're in, is if you have a lead source that is working well and is flowing and you're not spending as much as you can on it, put more into it to see what the capacity is of it and go until it's not linear anymore. Like if you spend $10 to get 10 leads, if you spend $20 to get 20 leads, these are made up numbers.
Yeah.
If you're able to do that, keep doing that until it stops working, and then move on to the next lead source. That's kind of my mentality of figuring out how to get the 20 leads at the top of the funnel to turn into 5 jobs at the bottom of the funnel.
And on the op, because you said you also have scorecards, and I love that, like being able to break down, and also when you either if you're doing it internally or you're hiring to be able to say, hey, I have a delta of 10 leads that I need to make up on a weekly basis. Like, what would you propose to get us there? And then you can shop from a place of cause instead of just like absorbing whatever the marketing guy tells you. So way more powerful on the production side, because I think obviously there's room to improve on for a lot of folks I talk to in terms of tracking their sales. But I'm curious on the production side because I know a lot of folks get sucked into production. How did you create the scorecard for the production team?
Yeah, production, it's really dependent on materials. Materials are usually the long pole in the tent of figuring out how quickly we can get the right material for the right job. So making sure we have that. Once that's taken care of and you have a good relationship with your supplier, then you're set there. And then the next step is making sure that you're not, don't be too, what's the right word? Optimistic in terms of what your crew can get done in a day, and make sure to leave margin, because operations should not be something that always holds you back at every turn. It's hard. It's hard to keep a crew fed and make sure they're working and you're not sending people home or whatever it may be. You've got to make sure if you're doing the right thing on the sales and marketing side to feed that side, then the metrics on the ops side are pretty simple. It's just how many holes can you dig for posts in a day, or how many feet can you put in a day, and make sure you're tracking that. And that's a little bit harder to track, because if our crew doesn't measure that, then someone has to. Otherwise, that data is useless because it's speculative and random.
Yeah.
So that's what we try to shoot for, is try to figure out either how many posts are dug, or how many feet are put in, or what was the count of late deliveries, or what was the count of jobs that didn't finish on time, and that's stuff that is a little easier to keep track of, because we have in our CRM, we'll budget 2 days for a job or a day for a job if it's small enough. And
Yeah.
if it runs over, then I can clearly count in a week how many went over and then address it with the team.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. So if someone has no scorecard and has been shooting from the hip, well, they're likely in the field. And so your advice would be find out what your key metrics are and figure them out and enforce them. So if you know it takes you're doing a certain number of linear feet per hour of this type of fence, then when you hand it off to someone else, you can track their production against yours and tell if it's on track or off track,
Absolutely.
essentially.
Absolutely. If I'm an owner operator and I run crew A and I
Yeah.
hire a new group lead to run crew B, I'm comparing them, but I really got to know my numbers before I let Steve run on crew B. Otherwise, it's not fair to him. So you got to be reasonable and fair with your employees and hold
Yeah.
yourself accountable first before you hire that next lead. Otherwise, they're going to feel like you're just making stuff up and get frustrated, and then they're going to do even worse jobs. Accountable people love accountability. So if you have a right number to give someone, then they'll do that. And if they can't, they'll tell you why, or you'll have to figure out why, because it's your company.
Yeah. Accountable people love accountability. That's good. That's a
That's not,
poster.
I don't think that's mine. I don't think
No?
I'm pretty sure that's not mine. No, no, no. I think I've heard it before, but I love it.
That's a great one. I haven't
Yeah.
heard it before or seen it on the poster of a dentist or something.
It'll be in my classroom one day when I become a teacher.
Yeah. Accountable people love accountability. Cool. Um, my next question is something that you just touched on. It has to do with accountable people love accountability, and that is how do you find people? What are some things you've noticed in terms of like finding good people? It doesn't necessarily be to open a new location for you. It could just be for, it could be in the field like an installer, but what advice do you have for anyone looking to hire good people?
Yeah. I wish I remember. There was a book I read that shaped a lot of the way I think about this. But I have a list of questions that I've built over 6 or 7 years now, that I constantly revise and I use across companies that I've touched or work on, and I try to get to know the person as much as I can, because whether you're an installer or whether you're a sales rep or you're a owner operator, if you don't care about what you're if you don't care too much about your personal standing in the world and what you do. There's an analogy I heard. This will illustrate this better. There's an analogy I heard once, that someone walked up to a bricklayer and said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm laying bricks." Walked up to the next guy and said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm building a wall." And then the third guy walks up to him. He's like, "Oh, I'm building a cathedral, because it's going to be a place where people come to worship, and it's a beautiful, like, I get to do this," and they're excited about it. And hearing the way people talk about either previous work experience or how they spend their free time, or I ask a lot of people how their spouse or closest family member or closest friend would describe them in terms of adjectives, and try to figure out, is this someone I want to really spend a lot of time with, especially early on when you're hiring your first employee or your fourth, when you still memorize everyone's birthdays, and when you're still super involved with the day-to-day of the people you get to steward. It's really important that you like the person. So you got to figure out, what are they like, and what makes them tick, and what do they care about. because you can teach them. If you're worried about does this person already know what to do or how to do their job, then you have not built a good enough system, and you should probably work on your system. You should be able to find someone with high enough agency who's capable of learning, and then teach them what they need to know because your system's going to be different. Does that
Where are
answer
you
it?
finding? Yeah, I think so. Where are you finding people? Are you posting ads somewhere? No, I've
Yeah, we
heard a lot of people talk about how much they struggle to find good people to. They struggle to find the right people to add to their team.
yeah, no, that's real. That's real. And I mean, from 2020 to now, it's been a wild. Like the labor market, when you look at Indeed and posting things on Indeed, there were times when it was like everyone's looking for a job, and there was times when no one's looking for a job. And now it's back to like
Mm,
there's tons of people, but the interest, like the skill level or the type of people that are out there, are not necessarily the A players. So it's hard, and you got to sift through it. But again, I just count on systems. I count on that I build a good enough system to be able to sift through. But I definitely post. I post things, whether it's on social media, on LinkedIn, on Indeed. Have a clear job description. Make it look professional. Update your profile so you look like a legitimate company. That goes a long way. Have a good website. Ask Alec and Ashton to make you one. There's plenty of ways to look more legitimate to be able to attract the right talent.
yeah, cool. I think that's super helpful. Yeah, great. Let me ask, you talked in your introduction, you talked about you opened a bunch of locations, then one of them's already shut. So maybe I'm curious, what is the mistake you made? If you feel like there was a mistake, scaling to multiple locations. And like, is there
Yeah.
something you could share? If an owner's thinking about expanding a second location, do you have any advice for them?
Yeah. You hear a lot of people say, don't work with your friends. That is not what I would say necessarily. I would say make sure you know what your friends want before you start working with your friends. The second location we opened was with a good friend of mine. We didn't necessarily flush out what everyone was trying to get out of this experience. And it was kind of just shoot from the hip, let's go, let's get going, start putting fences in. And then a few months in, we all realized I think we want pretty different things, and we should have done that way earlier. But it was a great lesson, and everyone learned something. Yeah, I would say make sure your expectations are clear. It's harder to do with friends because you think you're going to be on the same page. And that's what I assumed. And that was probably the mistake I made there.
Okay, I can definitely see and relate to that with some of my own friends who I'm sure would love to be in a situation like that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I want to move to the last section of this podcast, which is really kind of the next post. So it's sort of looking ahead, looking down the line. So if a contractor wanted to, let's start with if they wanted to open a new location, they wanted to expand into two locations, what should they start building this quarter to make that happen?
If they don't have a scorecard. Because especially if this other location is not going to be close to you, you got to have a way to figure out are things on track? Do I need to go out there and figure things out? Do I need to help with systems or processes or help hire or whatever it may be? But if you don't have a good scorecard or a way to keep track of the quantitative data of what's going on, then it's going to be really hard to maintain a good feel of what's going on. So I would say that, but you can do more than one thing in a quarter. I would say that, and then write more. I think that's a good tip for anyone who owns a business is just write things down, write down your thoughts, write down what you did and how it went and what you would change and try to make SOPs. Tina, who's one of my favorite people on the team, she's our lead admin, has done such a good job of. I thought I was good at writing things down, and then we brought her on, and I was explaining a bunch of things to her. I recorded a bunch of Loom videos and blah blah blah. And she wrote it all down and turned it into SOPs, and it's come in so handy as we've hired additional administrators. But that is huge because this new location is going to expect some guidance from you as they get going. So it's nice to have videos and
Checklists.
checklists, yeah, yeah, of
Yeah.
what to do.
That's huge. Any tools that you use, any special tools to manage your scorecard or any type of software or anything, or literally a notebook?
No, I wish I could just do a notebook, but we have people in different locations that need to see it.
Yeah.
I put it on Google Sheets. I love spreadsheets, and especially now, if you have a Google Workspace subscription, you have Gemini Pro for free, which is unreal. It's so helpful. You can just talk to this thing and describe. If you're not a very computer savvy guy, just or girl, just talk to the computer and tell it what you want, and it'll probably make 80% of it for you, and then you can tweak it and get it to where you want. But you got to block off some time to do stuff like that. So yeah, I use Google Sheets for it.
Okay. So
There
just
are programs out there that I hear are good. I think, is a big one that does a scorecard pretty well. I've never used it, so take that with a grain of salt. But I hear from trusted people that it's a really good software.
this will probably be my last question. Like you said, you've talked to a ton of different fence company owners. What do you think is one question that these, like the single location owners, the ones that are stuck in the grind, they're trying to grow, they're 90% referral based. What's one question that you feel like they're not asking themselves that they should be to get themselves kind of unstuck and out of that rut and onto the next level?
Counting on referrals for 90% of work is it's kind of scary. It's great if you're able to grow that way, but okay. I think I would say the question would be, do I want people to think exclusively of Fadi when they think of Heartwood Fence, or do I want them to think of Heartwood Fence when they think of Heartwood Fence? And if the referral knows Fadi, and that's the only reason we got the job, I don't think that's a good enough reason for me to get a job, in my opinion. And I want them to know the company, and I want them to know the team and what the team is capable of, because there's like at this point, I'm gonna be the worst person to install a fence for you personally, but we have a team that's so good at it that that shouldn't be a concern. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So when you think of that, the referral is usually a very personal thing. Um, so I would think about that and just think about how would you like your company to be known?
yeah. No, that's a great answer. I mean, we hear all the time, you hear all the time that the owner can be the number one mechanism for growth. And it can also be the number one mechanism for holding back growth. And to your point, like if they're thinking of that person as the referral source, that is great. You get the job, but your network only goes so far, and
Hmm.
your company can go so much further.
Hmm.
So, okay, perfect. Well, I appreciate you being on the podcast with us today, and giving us so much time, giving us advice, and helping us share some new perspective with, hopefully this reaches some people who are stuck and could really use this alternate viewpoint on how to successfully run a fence business. So, thank you very much for being here, and thanks everyone for listening to Post by Post. To this episode of Post by Post, the podcast where fence and deck builders share the real stories, the real struggles, and the real reasons behind the fences they build and behind the businesses they grow. Thanks, Fadi.
Thanks so much.